Hello, my name is Chris Nordmeyer. I'm the design engineer for cranks here at Zipp, and we want to show you how to install the Vuma Quad and Vuma TT cranks on a frame today. The first thing to do is to make sure the frame is ready for a crank to be installed. There's a couple of things to look out for right away. One is the derailleur cable. As it goes up through the bottom bracket on some bikes, this cable is actually routed through the shell, and you want to make sure that this cable cannot come in contact with your spindle as you install the crank. Strangely enough, is because we have the 30mm spindle versus the 24mm spindle, it actually can on some frames hit. So on this frame, that is not an issue. The cable runs outside the shell. The second thing to look for is derailleur cable guide. That's attached through the screw up through the bottom, and on some bikes that screw can go up through into the bottom bracket shell and actually cause an interference with our 30mm spindle. Again, you want to make sure that that's not the case on your bike. Again, this bike is in good shape. There's no protrusion into the shell. The next thing to do is to make sure that your shell is the right width. So for that, I'll need a set of calipers. We want to measure the bottom bracket width here on this frame to make sure that it is ready to receive our crank system. The Vuma Quad specifies a 68mm max dimension from face to face on this frame. On this one, it is from the factory, it is 67.9, which is great for us. Now that we've checked the width of this frame, we still need to chase and face the bottom bracket, and that's just to make sure that the bearing cup will sit flush on this face and then is also perpendicular to the center line of these threads, because that's very critical on our crank system to make sure that that sits in there properly. Otherwise you won't get the proper bearing alignment, you'll see excess drag, and eventually premature wear of the bearings. So the first thing you have to do is thread the inserts in from both sides, right and left, to make sure they're in. Once you have that in, then you're going to use a facing tool with a cutter to just make sure that you're getting going to get even contact all the way around. So you want to see this tool leave a mark just on the face. You don't have to take off any material really, you just need to make sure it's contact all the way around. Now that that's ready, I can repeat the process on the left side. It's the same procedure. Now that we have these two faced, we'll be able to move on. Well, let's take a quick measurement of the width again, and this will help us determine the number of shims we need to use later on during the installation process. It looks like we took off about 0.2 of a millimeter. That's not a lot. That's actually pretty good. Each of our shims is a 0.5 millimeter, so we probably won't have to use any additional shims. Now that we have the frame ready for installation, we can actually start. The first thing is to get your bottom bracket cups, or your bearing cups out, and install them in the bottom bracket. But before you even do that, you need to make sure you're applying a quality assembly lube, grease, or anti-seize to these threads. And so that's what I'm doing right now. Now that we have that in, we can start threading it into the shell. Okay, now it's just a simple repeat of the procedure for the non-drive side. Okay, I have them finger tight, so let's go ahead and finish the job. We supply a wrench with every crank set. Just a matter of putting it on, making it good and tight. Okay, now that we have the bearing cups installed in the frame, it's time to install the left arm. You want to get out your shim pack, and in that shim pack there's 2 of these aluminum spacers, 3 steel shims, and 1 wave spring. For this part, you just need 1 of the aluminum shims. Apply the grease directly to the spindle. Make sure you have a good thin film on the entire spindle prior to putting it in through the bearings. Okay. Put 1 spacer over the spindle. Make sure it's fully seated there. Then come around and install it into the frame. Occasionally it may be necessary to use a small rubber mallet to tap that through. All right, well now we're ready to install the drive side arm. First thing you need are your spacers, shims, and wave spring. First part to go on here is the aluminum spacer. Just want to put a thin coat of grease on this spacer, as well as the wave spring and shim. This just helps to reduce any potential creaking or anything. So the next thing to go on is the wave spring. Slide it over. And if you remember, we measured 68 millimeters across the bottom bracket, or just under 68 millimeters across the bottom bracket earlier. So based on that, we should only need one of these steel shims, but we'll save the other two in case it proves out that we need more. Okay, have those on. I'll rotate the left arm up to aid my installation. Just get this to finger tight, and then we'll torque it down. Get it, have it in here good. You're going to feel it snug up because of that tapered spline before it's have it as tight as you need. And there we go. So now we have an installed crank. Spinning freely, so that means that we don't have too many shims in here causing side load on the bearings. So, but let's make sure there's not too few. You want to push on this and see if we're getting movement of the arm towards the bearing cup. I'm not, so it feels good. If I was getting too much movement, I would need to add at least one more of these steel shims. If it was tight, I should take out that steel shim that I put in earlier. So that's a properly installed Vuma quad.